I think the one thing that Chris Eubank has that Conor doesn't in this fight is size and probably strength. What he doesn't have, in my opinion, is the boxing ability, the speed, the movement of Conor Benn. Don't get me wrong, if this fight was at the same weight class, Conor Benn's a big favourite. But Conor Benn's coming up 2 weight classes, and that's what makes this fight a 50-50. Eubank has the size, but Conor has the speed, the sharpness, and in my opinion, the ability.
In fact, the only reason this fight is a 50-50 is because of the weight. For me, Conor's younger, fresher, better puncher, better technician, more skill, better footwork. But he's at a big weight disadvantage.
Eddie Hearn has just let slip some insider information that shines a new light on the Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank Jr. fight. From weight issues to marketing plans, there's more at play than fans may know. The Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank Jr. fight that is coming up has everyone's eyes glued, and the only question now is, who wins? But it's not any fight. As was pointed out by Eddie Hearn, their fathers fought in the ring on one occasion, and now their sons, both of whom are in the world's top 15 rankings, are moving in to pen their own page. It's not a fight, it's a legacy at stake.
Fathers. It was the biggest, deepest rivalry in the history of British boxing. Right? And now their sons, who are both world ranked in the top 15, Conor in the top 5 in most, are fighting each other. The sons, right? And they are ready to fight each other now, here. And the build-up's been huge. It's a massive event. It's going to do huge pay-per-view numbers. And what is it? Two weeks away on Saturday.
Eddie wasn't afraid to speak about the story behind Chris Eubank Jr. being favored. He clarified that the only real reason Eubank is favored is due to his natural size advantage. In Hearn's opinion, this fight is actually a 50-50, not due to skill disparities, but due to Conor Benn putting everything on the line by moving up 2 entire weight classes. That aggressive move, in Hearn's opinion, levels the playing field. He echoed that if the 2 combatants were the same natural size, the odds would be heavily in Benn's favor, and this fight would be much closer than people think.
I think the one thing that Chris Eubank has that Conor doesn't in this fight is size and probably strength. What he doesn't have, in my opinion, is the boxing ability, the speed, the movement of Conor Benn. Don't get me wrong, if this fight was at the same weight class, Conor Benn's a big favourite. But Conor Benn's coming up 2 weight classes, and that's what makes this fight a 50-50. Eubank has the size, but Conor has the speed, the sharpness, and in my opinion, the ability.
Billy Joe Saunders joined in with an opinion that largely mirrored Eddie Hearn's, particularly in terms of Eubank Jr.'s physicality. He recognized Eubank's massive size and physical power, observing that his face bears signs of heavy sparring and mileage. Saunders did, however, make a distinction between being a good fighter and a good boxer. In his opinion, Eubank is physically strong, but without the subtle technicality and ring IQ that constitutes genuine boxing greatness. Although crediting Eubank with toughness, Saunders feels that Benn's quicker timing, energetic youthfulness, and better energy management may bring out the weaknesses of Eubank as the rounds go on.
Eubank can fight, but he just can't box.
Right.
That's the problem. He can fight, but he can't box. Eubank is, when we were going back 24, 25, like a wind-up toy, you could get him fit, wind him up, let him go, and he'd go all day.
Yeah.
Now we're at the stage of 33, 34, where you've got to learn to pace yourself, pick your punches, flow around. No disrespect to Liam Smith, but he was no different than a punch bag.
But while the son is under the limelight, Chris Eubank Sr. hasn't remained silent. He's expressed genuine concern for his son, conceding that he's worried about the way the sport is being managed today. In his opinion, the way things are being managed today by promoters would have been illegal a few years back, which gives an entirely new dimension to an already high-risk bout.
These are not dangerous men now. This is built on hype. So we look to the promoters. I'm watching you. I'm on you. Okay, and this will not stand. You know, your licenses should have been revoked a long time ago. Okay, and that time is here. Trying to boil my son down to 157 a few years ago, it would have killed him. Killed. It's real for us. Okay, and what these people are doing, they're running amok. It's uncontrollable. This is not who we are, okay? As fighters, and the promoters have a duty of care to the fighters.
Xavier Miller provided a partially concurring opinion with Eddie Hearn on Chris Eubank Jr.'s size advantage, but differed widely on how he judged the fight as a whole. While Hearn labeled it a 50-50 fight because Conor Benn was leaping up 2 weight divisions, Miller downplayed the idea of it being even. He claimed that this fight is far from even. Conor has to struggle to cut weight, whereas Eubank is naturally coming into the division. Miller highlighted that such extreme weight gain can drain a fighter, both physically and mentally, giving a legitimate advantage to the naturally more Eubank.
But you know, if Chris is even 70% of what he was, he's far too big for Ben. If he is really gone and shot, then yeah, he has a very good chance, because you know, he's the guy that can eat comfortably. You know, he doesn't have to pull himself down to make weight. You know, I look at it the same as I look at the, you know, obviously the Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia fight. You know, a lot of people just don't understand. You know, one guy planned not to make weight, and one guy was actually working hard to make the weight. It's not a fair fight. And that's without even talking about, you know, the accusations about with the PEDs.
Meanwhile, Chris Eubank Jr. took no nonsense about the claim he's being picked because he's big. Standing firm, he insisted on being respected based on his wins and experience, and not by physique alone. Speaking in rebuttal, Eubank Jr. brought out before the world his record, wars he has weathered, and the elite ring partners he had fought against. He vented frustration that analysts appear to play down his skill set and strategy for the superficial metrics of weight and reach. For him, it's not about size, it's about legacy, ring education, and proving once again that he's among the elite.
You know, where's the fucking respect? You know, I've had 34 fights, 25 KOs, and I can only beat this guy because I'm a bit bigger than him?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
I'm gonna beat him because I'm a better fighter.
Size has unquestionably been one of the most contentious variables in this bout, particularly with how each combatant is coming at it from opposite directions. Chris Eubank Jr. must drop down to a lighter weight, which could potentially cost him strength and stamina, while Conor Benn is bulking, adding likely power. Eubank Sr., who has criticized, insisted that cutting too aggressively could be a costly mistake. He cautioned that stepping into the ring under anything other than full capacity would ultimately come back to bite his son, converting what would otherwise be a strength into a perilous weakness.
For the Metro newspaper, and in that interview, Conor walked in, and I said to Conor, you know, and I was saying to Nigel, please, you know, don't do this. You know what it is to, you know, my son is 33. For him to drop 3 pounds beneath 160 puts his life in danger. And Nigel said, sorry, you know, if he doesn't take the fight, if he's above that, then he's going to have to pay a forfeit of £300,000. And I said, well, I'm very happy to pay that. So please, you know, stand down. I was speaking to both of them, and Nigel said no, he's not standing down. He said he signed a contract, he's a grown man. So I said, Nigel, please, you know, my king, please, you know, don't do this.
Relations between Chris Eubank Jr. and his dad have grown more public. In a recent interview, Eubank Jr. made it very clear he wishes to make his own choices, finally out of his father's shadow. He emphasized that he's a grown man and he can dictate his own fate, win or lose. The generation gap became evident as Jr. underscored his autonomy, saying he's had enough of trying to live up to someone else's picture. His message was assertive. This is his fight, his career, and nobody, not even his iconic father, gets to control his course anymore.
We are fighters, you know. I'm 35 years old. I'm not a kid anymore. You can't be worried or fearful for my safety. If as a man I feel like I can do something, if I can achieve something, you have to be happy with that, support that, and, you know, not go against it because you believe it's not right or it's not okay or it's against the rules. The fight is going to happen. He's still saying things like the fight won't happen, and I can't even say it's crazy for him to say that because he said it the last time and the fight didn't happen. So even though it still is crazy for me to hear him say that, I've got to just let him say it. But the fight will happen and he should be there.
In support of Chris Eubank Sr.'s fears, Nathan Heaney notably pointed out the risks of brutal weight reduction coupled with a stringent rehydration policy. As Heaney suggests, if Eubank Jr. is not permitted to fully rehydrate, he might start the fight weakened, compromising not only the outcome but his own health. The physical price of losing and being unable to replace that water weight in time can impact stamina, resistance to punches, and concentration. Heaney's position reflected concerns that Eubank is sacrificing too much of himself before he even gets in the ring, making life easier for Benn.
Ben shouldn't get anywhere near him, to be honest, in terms of like the side. But then that's where all this controversy is coming more recently in terms of rehydration clauses and all this kind of stuff. But the IBF have that anyway. But I don't think they're fighting for an IBF world title, so that's a totally different thing, to be honest. But yeah, it's one of them. It just depends how drained Eubank is obviously to make weight, and then obviously the rehydration. It's okay when you're making weight, but it's the part afterwards when you refuel and rehydrate. That's where the performance gains or declines will happen. And if he's not allowed to rehydrate correctly, then it's going to fall into bed.
Conversely, in response to his son, Chris Eubank Sr. did not come back with words of support or understanding. Rather, he doubled his disapproval, even calling his son a disgrace following some of his behavior during the press conference for the fight. The older Eubank seemed to be very disappointed, not only in Junior's behavior, but in what he sees as a lack of focus and dignity. His words indicated a profound gulf between father and son, a deeper emotional dimension that's now overflowed into the public domain. To Senior, though, this has nothing to do with boxing. It's a matter of respect, legacy, and personal reputation.
Because I will not be an accomplice to their stupidity, to their circus. Junior, you're smashing an egg against this guy's face. I taught you that. I didn't teach you that. Who taught you that? Did Karen teach you that? That's disgraceful. I'm gonna stand in your corner. You must be mad. You must be mad. I would never be in your corner. You're a disgrace. You're smashing an egg in someone's face, and then you're trying to justify it. There's no justification for that. There's nothing noble about that.
Eddie Hearn, however, has attempted to remain as professional as possible, particularly in regard to the complicated dynamics between Eubank Jr. and Sr. Hearn responded firmly that he's not inclined to comment on private family matters, repeating again that he's here to push the fight, not judge. In avoiding those strains, Hearn keeps himself balanced as a promoter whose role is to concentrate on the logistics and not emotions. He wishes the focus to remain on the fighters and the fight itself, not a father-son conflict that would otherwise serve to distract from the actual drama set to transpire in the ring.
Sad, look, I think that it would be easy for us as the away corner, especially with all the abuse that Eubank's given me and the slander that we've received, for me to go in deep. But it's a personal thing. It's family for them. And, it's sad to see. I hope that, look, even beyond this fight, there's more to life than just this fight. It doesn't look like they're going to get, rekindled before the fight. Post-fight, I hope they can, communicate and get along. Life's too short. Eubank's got a lot to focus on next week, and he'll do it with his own. He's a big boy, and he'll be ready. And he's a tough kid. He'll give it everything. And it's a shame that anything happens like that, between father and son. And I hope that they can, manage to revive the relationship.
Notably, Johnny Nelson supported Eddie Hearn on this, explaining it's a family affair and not something the public or the media should be dissecting. While fans are hungry for every morsel, those involved in the fight appear to concur. Some things are best left behind closed doors.
Surprised Chris actually gave you as much as he actually did. I know Chris, he's very selective about when he talks, what he says, and so to get that line from Chris, you got an insight to what was going on in behind the scenes with the Eubank family chaos. You know what? There's a it's not our business. There's an issue going on in the family. Chris is a father. He said that as a father he's got to reprimand his son. Boy, I didn't teach you that. And as a son, as in Junior's like, Dad, I'm making my own path. This is how I do it. And that's always going to be the case. It's not until Chris is retired and Senior's retired and Junior's retired and he's achieved whatever he's had to achieve, then credit will be given. I know Senior, when he was doing whatever he did as a fighter, he got chastised. People called him everything from a pig to a dog, but he did it his own way. Still ended up being world champion. Still ended up being like one of the UK's biggest names when it comes to boxing. He did it his own way. So he did his own experience to get his own wisdom. That's what Junior's doing. And so as a father, the father saying, you know what, you can't do. I understand the love of a father. What are you doing, son? But only time will tell the story whether or not Chris's choices, Junior's choices, are the right choices.
However, in spite of his impartiality, Eddie did suggest that the emotional undertones of the feud have altered the essence of this fight. Early on, it was sold as a high-stakes business fight with a legacy component. It now seems very personal, particularly after the infamous egg slap moment. Hearn stated that what began as a business shootout has developed into a vendetta fight, possibly changing what's on the line. For each of the fighters, that might no longer be about titles or pay-per-view figures. It's pride, revenge, and who gets the final word. The build-up, Hearn implied, just got very real.
Listen, I've seen worse, but just understand when you do that, everything changes. That's all. The game's the game. And now, just wish we had a bigger stadium.
Even before the interviews and slap controversies, the venom between Eddie Hearn and Chris Eubank Jr. was visible. In one particularly heated press conference, words were exchanged that underscored a history of tension. Hearn's expression throughout revealed more than his words did, a clear indication that personal feelings might be involved. The exchange of words didn't merely promote the fight, it revealed layers of bitterness. This isn't merely Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank Jr. It's about unfinished business between promoter and fighter, legacy conflicts, and a platform too large to be ignored. The theatrics are playing out in and out of the ring.
So as I was saying, Eddie.
No.
You get your turn.
This is not the Eddie Hearn show.
One thing's for sure, it ain't the Chris Eubank show.
This is not the Eddie Hearn show.
No.
This is Eubank versus Benn. So you can either sabotage this.
You got your man to your right. He's going to say a few words.
You can either sabotage the event, and I'll just start talking to Ben personally, directly, or you can be quiet and we can move on with the press conference. I don't want to hear anything you have to say.
I mean, you can do whatever you want.
We can be here all day.
I've been addressed.
We can be here all day.
I've been addressed.
I don't want to hear what you have to say. So,
well, to be honest with you, many people do.
Ade,
I think I'm more popular than you.
Ade, if you want to control the situation and move forward, you can.
I'm enjoying this. This is almost like a mini face-off.
So how would you run the press conference, Chris? Because you're such an unbelievable promoter.
I'm not running it, but I'm just not listening.
So what happens now?
Furthermore, Virgil Ortiz validated the theory that size might prove to be a determining factor, standing alongside Eubank Jr. on a media day and commenting on his physical stature. Hunter, renowned for his keen analytical mind, observed that Eubank's size and reach might prove a genuine problem for Benn, particularly if utilized correctly. Although not ruling out Benn's qualities, Hunter suggested that physicality is still a factor when styles come into conflict at such differing levels. His quiet support of Eubank's frame as an asset put him in the camp of those who think size won't just be seen on the scale, it'll be evident under the lights.
Looks like he hits pretty hard. Eubank, I've stood next to him, and he's pretty big. So, I mean, I don't know. It's like you said, maybe the weight could matter. You know, so I don't know, man. But that's a very interesting fight, and
However, Chris Eubank Jr. disagreed with both Eddie Hearn and Virgil, saying this fight is not about size. For him, it's about brains, strategy, and sophisticated ring craft. In a fiery retort, Eubank Jr. asserted that boxing is an art where discipline, adjustment, and strategic implementation overcome brute power. He thinks fans and commentators are giving too much value to body weight and not enough to the mental battles within the ropes. To him, it's chess, not arm wrestling.
How much of an advantage do you think you have in the size, strength, and power department?
Keep hearing this 2 weight classes thing. He's not coming up 2 weight classes. His last fight was at 156 pounds. He's putting 4 pounds on. He hasn't been a welterweight for 3 years. This fight isn't about size or weight. It's about skill. It's about dedication. It's about expertise, and all those areas I excel in, and have got many, many more years of experience over Conor Benn, and that will be the deciding factor on the night.
In spite of Eubank Jr.'s assertive posture, most of his detractors and supporters agree that his advantage is greater in physicality than in finesse. Eddie categorically asserted that if you take away his size, Eubank doesn't have much over Benn. He contended that Benn's training camp, top-class sparring, and hunger at present outweigh anything Eubank has shown in the last few months. And then of course there is the notion that Eubank's stint with his current trainers hasn't produced similar returns as Benn's progressive style. It's perceived that although Eubank will prattle on about skills and IQ, it's Benn who is demonstrating real improvement on all fronts.
Chris Eubank Jr., we know what his training camps are about. He's had about 36 trainers. You see the level of the sparring that he has. He doesn't train in the same way as Conor Benn. Skill is definitely not what is winning this fight.
Apart from size, what advantages has he got over Conor?
Moving on, Eddie, even with his promotional obligations, is now under fire for pulling out of a public $1 million challenge he issued to Eubank Jr. The internet has not been gentle, with most accusing Hearn of hypocrisy and being unaccountable. Critics are decrying the disparity between his public bluster and his backstage behavior. This scandal has shrouded the fight week buildup, with questions raised on whether personal ego is obscuring professional judgment. Hearn's recent moves are causing eyebrows to be raised, as even the most experienced promoters get swept up when ego, legacy, and reputation are involved.
Can't bet, we're not allowed to bet. We all received an email from the board recently stating Regulation 30, which is that any member, i.e. licence holder, cannot bet, advise anyone else to bet, permit to bet on any event they have any involvement with. And I would never have a bet with Chris Eubank Jr. Ever. Because there's a reason for that. And I only bet with certain people.
And that's the breakdown. The weight, the mind games, the legacy, and the disrespect. If you believe this fight is larger than the scales, or if you're traveling with the man who claims it's all about skill, hit that like button, smash subscribe, and turn on those notifications so you don't miss a single update in the build up to this war. This one's getting personal, and we're just getting started. Catch you in the next round.